Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for the first X Camera Talk of 2022. My name is Samantha Tai, and I am the Audience Relations and Communication Coordinator here at InterArts Matrix. Before we continue with today's program, I would just like to take a quick moment to acknowledge that the land on which I'm speaking to you today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Neutral peoples. The city, now known as Kitchener, exists under the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, which was originally signed by the Six Nations and the Dutch, but throughout history, other nations, including France and England, also signed on. The treaty is made up of three tenets that characterize our collective responsibility: take only what you need, leave enough for someone else, and keep the dish clean. As a settler on this land, I am also bound to this treaty, and I recognize that I have not always upheld my treaty duties. I also acknowledge that as the daughter of an immigrant, I have been afforded certain rights and opportunities that are not always extended to people who are native to this land. Whether we are colonizers or have been colonized, it's important that we recognize the impact that colonization has had, because we're all responsible in creating a more just future for everyone. So thank you again for joining us this afternoon, and welcome to X Camera Presents Andrea Nann. So before we move on with today's program, I'm just going to give a brief overview of how X Camera started. So X Camera began in the spring of 2019 when a group of people interested in the arts began gathering at Fresh Ground Cafe, or the Common Studio in downtown Kitchener, every Friday afternoon to hear a lecture by an interdisciplinary artist or professional. These lectures were followed by a question and answer period and a networking time where folks would stay in the cafe space, eat lunch together, and continue their conversations and build a community. This happened every Friday afternoon until March 2020, when our gatherings shifted online. And it's in the spirit of supporting artists and continuing to build this community that X Camera continues virtually on Zoom. And we will be continuing this way on Fridays at 1 o'clock for the foreseeable future. So our guest this afternoon is contemporary dancer and artistic director, Andrea Nann. And we are very, very excited to have Andrea here today. Andrea was specially selected for this series by Kate Cameron McHugh, who is one of the mentees in the Cove Covox Incubator Program. So the format for today's talk will be much more conversational and participatory than talks we've had in the past. So please feel free to participate however you feel comfortable. I also want to note that today's meeting is being recorded. So if you are not comfortable with this, please feel free to keep your camera and your microphone turned off. You can also change your Zoom name to something other than your name if you don't want that to be recorded as well. And if anyone needs help with that, please feel free to send me a private message on here. As you may have noticed, the question and answer function that is usually available during our talks is also not available in today's meeting. So if you would like to ask a question, you can use the raise hand function, or you can type it in the chat, or you can send either Kate or myself a private message, and we will ask the question on your behalf. Yeah, so I think that's all I have to say. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Kate.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Hi, everyone. I am so pleased to be here today with dance artist Andrea Nann. I first had a chance to meet Andrea last August when she came to Kitchener to work with me on a project I was starting. I was so pleased to work with her because as an artistic instigator, because I had admired her multidisciplinary approach for years. As I continue working with Andrea, I'm not only learning about how to create dance or how to create a show, but also learning about creating intentional relationships with artists who emphasize connections based on kindness, trust, and mutual respect. So Andrea Nann is the founding artistic director of Dreamwalker Dance Company in Toronto. She graduated from the Fine Arts Department at York University and spent 15 years dancing with the Danny Grossman Dance Company. She creates work for stage, for film, and for outdoor sites, and her work and accolades are extensive. Last year, she made an interactive website performance experience on her full-length piece, Fire, Horse, and Shadow. And in 2020, she Dreamwalker partnered with Guelph Dance to create the first iteration of the Welcome Project Sharing Stories, which brought together people from diverse communities to participate in a creative process through movement. She's also the creator of the Conscious Bodies methodology, which is the core of her artistic practice and her community engagement. And as I have started working with Andrea, I have also started using Conscious Bodies in my artistic practice. So while I was preparing for today, I read a sentence on the Dreamwalker Dance page that so beautifully describes Andrea to me. So I just want to read that to you quickly. So Andrea believes that dance can shift attitudes and ways of being, tuning us into what makes each of us distinct to what we share, and ultimately how we can live together in wonderment and peace. From our initial meetings, it was so clear to me that Andrea cares deeply, and this shows through in her work as a dancer, a choreographer, an instigator, and a community mobilizer. So welcome, dear Andrea.
Wow, thank you so much, Kate. What a joy and an honor to be here. And thank you to InterArts Matrix and to this amazing group of people who has gathered with us in person. This is what we now call in person today in this digital format. And that's really a big part of the questions that I'm going to be inviting and asking today. I tend to meander a lot when I talk, so I have written down a few notes. If you don't mind if I read as I make this introduction. But first, I will say that I am coming to you from Takaranto, also known as Toronto, where the trees meet the water. I am facing right now towards Kitchener, intentionally trying to just really reach across time and distance. So I'm facing northwest, and there's light coming in from the western window. I'm wearing a t-shirt that has like a mythical winged creature on it, and I am inviting myself to be inspired by what my imagination can bring forth as I feel my way into this process of us being together today. I just want to say that I am also sitting on a round bouncy ball. So you will probably see me moving a lot, and I invite you to turn your eyes away from the screen if that becomes distracting, but it's just something, I'm a kinetic processor, so it's very hard for me to sit still and formulate thoughts. And I'll start with some obvious things that we are all experiencing. The world around us, the world we are engaging within, is expanding to include digital space. This includes live interactions like this and live streaming, and also asynchronous interactions, which now allows me to invite future participants in this session who will be watching a recording. So for us to just bring those folks into our awareness as we are participating today, to include them. So hello, future participants. As an artist who primarily creates for live experiences, I'm finding myself spending a lot of time considering the nature of presence in digital space and observing the new naturalness of happenings like this event, where we are essentially collapsing time and distance to be together remotely. So what is presence as we come together at different times and from different distant places. A question. I don't have answers. I have lots of questions. I notice that technology for me dephysicalizes lived experience. And I'm aware of the impact that this has on my own personal sense of whole being presence and on interconnectivity. So I ask myself and I ask us to consider, can practicing embodiment attune us to the aliveness of digital spaces and advance the development of sensory, perception-based movement, image, breath, sound, languages, and felt senses that it can cross the skin into digital experience. So I am going to consider and invite you to consider these boundaries as skins, this portal or window that we're connecting with now as a skin, a membrane, as something that we can consider the aliveness of. So how can our perceptions of ourself and our own beingness in this moment influence the nature of our relationship and influence how and what we create and co-create in and for digital interaction and experiences? How can our considerations of presentations, also known as sharings of our products, be considered part of an ongoing process of embodied discovery? So lots of ways of new perspectives into how we're creating this, even this right now. So these are all questions that I'm asking myself as I feel my way into this engagement with you. If we were at that wonderful cafe, I really wouldn't be reading notes at all. I would just be responding to how we are sharing space and to the intelligence of my body as I perceive your interest or where your curiosities and what is coming alive in you as I sort of start to introduce these concepts. So this is already, something different. So in that vein, I would like to invite anyone now who would like to turn on their camera or actually just unmute their mic, any way that you want to participate. And there is every shade, like you are already participating not simply, you are already participating by being here and creating this energetic circle. And those in the future, you are participating as well. If anyone wishes to participate by also including their video or opening their audio, I'm going to invite anyone to share your name, where you are, perhaps what direction you're facing, or what surface you're sitting on, or lying down on, or standing on, and to share maybe a word about what you're perceiving of the weather outside. And if you want to do that and then you can pass to somebody else who has their camera on, that would be great. So maybe I will pass to Lizzie.
Hello, everyone. Oh, I am here. I'm also in Toronto. I'm currently facing east. I'm facing where I just left. I'm just realizing. So I'm here in a better place, in a better environment. So I'm feeling very energized. And I have a south facing window, so I always have bright, beautiful light. And I'm sitting on a velvet green chair that is very comfortable and supportive for me. So I'm feeling so much love and energy and care from everyone. So I will pass it to Tara.
Hi, everyone. Oh, it's so nice to be here. And thank you, Lizzie. That was a lot of really joyful energy. It's nice to feel that. I'm in Kitchener and I am from Toronto, and I literally have no idea which way I'm facing ever because Kitchener is like a circle maze. And it doesn't bother me. I don't know which way I'm facing, and I'm okay with that. It's very, very cold outside, so I'm very happy to be cozy and warm. And I'm going to pass it on to Samantha.
Hi, so I am sitting in Kitchener, and I think I'm facing northeast, but I also never know which direction I'm facing in Kitchener. I have no directional landmarks here. But yeah, my window is like very frosty, so I know it's very cold outside, but I'm just really, really loving the sunshine. It's making me feel, yeah, a lot happier and hopeful about warmer days soon. I will pass to Kate.
Okay, so I am at my mother's house, and full disclosure, I had to ask her what direction I'm facing. My mom always knows about the directions, and I never know. So I'm facing west. Thank you, Mom. And I'm sitting on a wooden chair with a cushion. And the sun is shining in Elmira, where my mother lives, and it's just filling me with joy. Okay, so I will pass it to Fatima.
Yes. Oh, hello, everyone. Nice to meet everyone. And yes, I am in Waterloo, and I am facing northeast, northeastern or northern east. I don't know, somehow, somewhere. And it is very cold here too in Waterloo. And I am comfortably, I'm sitting on a chair with a back support, of course, because to make it more comfortable. And happy to be here and getting some energy from everyone. And thank you of doing this for us, Andrea. Yes.
Fatima, would you like to pass to either Isabella?
I don't see anyone here. Oh. That's the problem. I try, I don't see any other faces than.
Let's pass to Isabella.
Okay, I didn't see on my screen. I don't know.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Fatima. Fatima, if you want to, yes, good to see you here. So I'm in Waterloo, and I am facing west, and it's very sunny and cold outside, and preparing to get even colder. It's supposed to be minus 26 tonight.
No, too much.
And I'm not sitting, I'm standing, because I sit too much, so from time to time, I like to stand. And I will pass it on. Let me see here. Who is on, who hasn't spoken? I'll pass it on to Sheila.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sheila, and I am in Kitchener, and I'm facing northwest in my bright, sunny office space with all of these lovely amber tones, and I'm feeling really grateful to be here. And I'm sitting on an old office chair that I need to replace. And I think that's all the people that I can see. I don't know if there's anyone else with their camera on.
Cameron is with his camera.
Oh, sorry. Cameron, please go.
I'll say hi. Hi, I'm Cameron. I'm in Kitchener right now, and I think I'm facing north-ish. And it's pretty sunny outside here as well. I think it's nice and sunny. I'm actually currently sitting on my bed because my partner is conducting some job interviews. We just have 2 rooms, so I'm in here. That's me.
Thank you. And to everyone who is participating in this, we really can feel your energies. And the more that we tune into our own energy, we can have greater sense of all. I'm going to just introduce a couple more questions, and then Kate, maybe I'll invite you to ask questions as well. And we also have clips from the interactive web performance to share today. And the interesting thing, the reason I wanted to bring those clips into this space is as we start to consider this transformation of our ideas or our assumptions about presentation and performance, as my invitation is to really start to experience it as part of a process. I wanted to share work that I shared as a finished offering, a completed offering. And I extracted 4 sections of the work where I think it's quite clear that you can see the distinction between something that might look in the before times as process, but how it's contextualized in this way as in presentation form. So we will get there, but I just wanted to invite another few considerations as we are starting to become more aware of our bodily experiences in this shared time. So my question is, how do we further enliven, enliven these spaces with the energies of our felt senses? And we all know this as when we're in live performance, how much of that felt sense is the wordlessness of the experience of art. And so how can we enliven this digital space with those felt senses? I bring the possibility of embodiment practices as something we can do to awaken our awareness of the aliveness, intelligence in our own bodies as a starting place, to improve maybe and extend our sense of self in the world, and the world now to include this portal space. My hope is that in practicing embodiment, we'll begin to literally soften the membranes of our bodies, of our beingness, of our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual wholeness, softening those membranes so that we can fully experience and perceive the connections and relationships that we're making between ourselves and the world. A relationship to what I'll just say, to all that is. Senses and sense of noticing or arriving can lead us into questions of where we go next. And when we talk about sensing, there are kind of those 5 dominant senses that in this culture, and this is really important to note, that the 5 senses that we're offered as taste, touch, smell, seeing and hearing. I have so many senses that I actually have to think about what the 5 dominant senses are. That those are not, that's really something imposed in this kind of culture that we're in, and that there are many other cultures that define senses differently and that experience the world through more senses. And I think as artists, we have many, many more senses. And I'd like to suggest that even our sense of curiosity and our sense of discovery and sense of just this coming together, the connectivity and togetherness is a very strong sense that we as artists are cultivating. So when we can't touch and taste and smell each other in these digital spaces, what other ways can we activate these senses of curiosity and connection and discovery so that we can really fully co-create and create experiences? So those are the questions I just want to put out. And Kate, I don't know if you want to respond or if anybody else wants to.
I just am wondering, can we even pull it back just a little bit to the title of your talk today? And could you talk a little bit about what does embodiment practice mean? A few people asked me that when I invited them to the talk, and I feel like you can explain what that means better than I can.
Yeah, it's a huge question. That is, and thank you for bringing that up. We talk about embodiment all the time, and in some ways it is something that people who practice embodiment, it's something we feel and it's hard to describe. But in this context, I'm really using that word as a way to for us to tune in and tap into these felt experiences and senses and the internal intelligence of our beingness, of our bodies, specifically embody, like how can we see and experience the body not just as a physical thing, but as a sensing intelligence that is actually sending us messages all the time and receiving information, and that we want to draw more of our sort of head mechanism to include this intelligence of the body. So embodiment in this conversation is about activating our awareness to begin with. Noticing is sort of the first step, noticing even where you are situated and what you're sitting or standing upon, noticing the temperature and the weather, the light, noticing each other. But noticing is the beginning of embodiment in this conversation, and what we can then perceive and transmit and share and connect together would be this second aspect of embodiment in this.
Thank you. Thank you. Did you, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like if we were in person, I would be like moving like this to express embodiment. So
well, you can still move like that. That would be fine.
I was in a conversation with a presenter this morning where we were talking about a performance that I'm doing for them. And they said, oh, and then this will happen. And then there will be this, movement thing. And I just said, well, I don't want to make an assumption that because it is an embodiment experience, what embodiment looks like. Embodiment looks like all of us right now in this moment. So as we start to become more aware of our felt senses, right now you're really tuning into listening sense. So you are probably more still, less active. But as we start to awaken more of our body awareness, embodiment might get active, and it could be very active or it could be very, very quiet. So it's just, yeah, I want to throw that out there. Yes, Tara.
I maybe this is just from my dancer perspective, but I feel like I'm better at expressing myself through that body embodiment, that movement. And maybe if we all tried to do that more than using our words, it would be easier to understand each other. And I think also I feel a little bit like we teach ourselves out of listening to the intuition and the sort of natural things that we pick up on, we block them out a little bit. And so maybe through this kind of conversation, we'll begin to open those channels up a little bit more. Just a thought.
Yes. I hope that folks who are starting to sense themselves more in the place in their world are starting to maybe even move a little bit more. Walk around, stretch, or just shift your position, change your relationship to the screen, and to realize that even when we're facing away from the screen, we're still engaged with each other.
So in your introduction, you talked a little bit about how you had Fire, Horse, and Shadow ready to bring alive to a live audience. And when the pandemic happened, there was a huge shift. Can you talk a little bit about how that came to be this interactive, your website calls it an interactive website performance experience. And like, did you have to come around to this idea? Was it heartbreaking? How did this come into being?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for asking. We were literally March 19th was the premiere date for the new performance, which was designed specifically and only to be performed live. We already had a very multi-language as part of the presentation, and it's myself and a shadow artist. So there was already this other language that was a huge balanced part, the yin and the yang of the piece. So yes, there was the heartbreak of not being able to experience it in a live setting with others, but it was a really intuitive, natural expansion of the work to consider how it might be translated into a digital experience. And interactivity was an element that was critical to the concept of the piece. The piece had a sort of focus around the Chinese zodiac and the body clock, which is going to be described in the clips that we have today. There was already a huge element of internal awareness of organs and activation of organs in relation to storytelling. So even though it was a dance piece, it has a spoken word component that was already part of the finished product, and this bodily awareness side of it that is spoken about and also expressed through gesture. So it was an amazing opportunity in a time of challenge and tragedy that we had to be able to translate this particular work into a digital format. And it was quite exciting to be put into that situation where we wanted to extend the questions that we were already starting to ask for live performance into another realm. It was my first foray into digital formats other than making dance films, which I've done a lot. So maybe do you want to share the clips now, Kyle? Kate, would that be a good time? So these are 4 sections. The website interaction is set up so that there are many different ways to interact with the material. The material is divided into 24 sections. 12 of them are related to one animal from the Chinese zodiac, which is 12 different animals. So there's 12 story-based sections that are related to the animal. And then there are 12 felt senses that are related to organs. So these are 4 of the 24 sections. In the experience, some of the material is strung together. So you'd click and you would see a sequence of sections that we've pre-selected to put together. So you would sit back and have more of that receiving quality to the performance. Other sections, there's an open constellation and you click and play sections at your own choosing. There's time in between. There's a sound score in between for you to have space to absorb and receive the information before you go on to a next selection. And there are other places right at the beginning where we sort of introduce the whole concept by you click, you play one section, there's space in the cosmos with the sound, and then you click and you play another. There's also a component of the website where you can click and find out information about your own personal Chinese zodiac and 5 elements sort of divination, zodiac readings. And there is another section where there is just an introduction of the movement vocabulary. So you'll see that one of those sections is how we'll start. I'm going to introduce the movement vocabulary that becomes part of the piece. So maybe that's enough introduction. We'll go. The shadow artist's name is Annie Katsura Rollins.
Gallbladder, liver, lung, large intestine, stomach, spleen, heart, small intestine, bladder, kidney, pericardium, triple burner. The 12 organs of the Chinese body clock. My grandmother Lynn and my uncle Norman, they were both born in the year of the rat. Uncle Melvin. My grandfather, Harry Chin. Me. Uncle Ronnie. My mum. My pawpaw was one of the first generation of Chinese babies born in Canada. As a young woman, she was described as warm, friendly, and unassuming. She was widely loved by her family and her community because, in their words, she was unobtrusive, non-directive, and non-demanding by nature. My mum says that her mum never complained about anything. She just kept everything inside, quietly going about her own business. When she married my grandfather, she became Mrs. Chin, nationality Chinese, giving up not only her family name, but also her birthright as a Canadian-born non-citizen. For their honeymoon, Harry took Lynn back to his ancestral village in Guangdong province, and that visit turned into an entire year spent in a small rural area where she was teased with the nickname Can of Salmon because she was a product of Canada, not China. When my family tells this story, everybody laughs, but I know I'm not the only one who's troubled by this hard image of my grandmother's sealed and contained silence. To play the violin, you must throw your head back and place the end of the wooden instrument right up against the soft tissue of your neck, along one side of the larynx, also known as your voice box. Your left hand will support the violin neck, and the back of the instrument will settle along the ridge of your collarbone. Vibrations of sound are created when you run the horsehairs of your bow over the violin strings. The powerful vibration from these running horsehairs resonates through the entire instrument, traveling down the chest cavity towards the heart. On a good day, the player's heart will open, but it doesn't stop there. This opening of the heart is like a dam bursting, and like salmon spawning, the heart's desires make their run upwards past the vocal cords and out through the violin. It's the combined force of these vibratory experiences that create the unique sound of this instrument. And perhaps this is one reason why the violin is described as the instrument that most closely resembles the human voice. The Chinese body clock describes a 24-hour cycle of activation for the 12 major organs of the human body. Yin, fire, pericardium. Coming to this. The element fire is associated with the circulation system, the heart, and the tongue. Fire represents physical strength, force, courage, desire, initiative, fertility, passion, purification, and rejuvenation. I read somewhere that the name Mustang was derived from the Spanish word mustengo, which means ownerless beast or stray horse. I recognize myself in these meanings. It's a fact that there wasn't time for us or a place for us, and it's likely that I felt my voice wasn't valued and wasn't even heard. But when I played the violin and now when I dance, I don't give a thought to my identity or my position in life or what I'm trying to achieve. I simply am. I tap into the frequency of my own expression and feel close to myself and to the women in my family line. And like them, I know that living a better life means releasing myself from the story and stepping out to create a new place where one doesn't yet exist.
Oh, that was so beautiful, Andrea. Thank you.
Thank you for receiving. Should we open up to questions, conversation, further conversation?
Sure.
How are people feeling?
Well, when I see you dancing, I just want to get up and dance too.
Yay!
I am curious, can you talk a little bit more about the process of what we just saw?
Yes, and we earlier I was inviting you to observe process and how I had made a decision in that last section in particular to include a whole bunch of outtakes as part of a section. This is obviously something that wouldn't have been part of the original live performance, and it was a bonus that we could add in different ways of presenting an idea. So process, and Cameron, what I was talking about earlier is just this flip of a paradigm to consider that presentation and full production could be considered part of a process, always, that we are always in process, that there's never a boundary of something being complete, that there's always a sense of curiosity and discovery, and that even when we present something in a form as final as a film or a website that is sort of fixed in time and place, that we always experience it as process. And to me, that relates to how we come into things in relationship. So when we talk about time and space or place, that we always invite there to be consideration of the relationship that is going to be created as something new with whoever experiences this at a future time or at the same time. These are things that we always consider when we're in live performance, and I want us to consider, I want to continue to consider the aliveness of that relationship, even when we're working in digital formats that are no longer, or that might be asynchronous in their timing. So I know that's not what you asked in terms of process of creating that work, but I think that word is like that, the nature of process and the development of a relationship that I could continue to evolve with people who view the work was a huge part of how we made selections to create the live performance interactive website experience. That's why all those words become necessary, because it's such a paradigm shift to consider that when you click and play videos on a site, that you are actually engaged in a relationship with the creator. It's just what I want to bring more awareness to.
Are there any questions? We can open it up to everyone else.
Tara.
Yeah, Tara, go ahead.
Sorry, I also forgot to mention I'm a huge fan of yours, Andrea. So this is really exciting for me. Sorry. Yeah, I found watching the outtakes connected me to you as a person, not just as a dancer. Like, you're obviously a beautiful dancer, and we could kind of watch you endlessly move, but then to see you in and out of that performer persona and the real, well, they're both real you, but a different part of you, I think really worked on a digital level, because it's the connection that we often feel we're missing. And so to see that, I felt even more connected to you as an artist. So that was really beautiful. It was exciting. I guess I don't really have a question. I'm just, maybe the question would be, what brought you to working with a shadow artist?
Yes, this is a wonderful discovery about the nature of the work. When I started to dive into my matrilineal beingness, that aspect of my beingness, I really was able to understand the nature of my choice to become a dance artist, because I did not feel comfortable using my voice in the world. And I really wanted to understand my discomfort with speaking and hearing my own voice, even because I come from a culture, as many of us do, to various reasons, cultures of silence, particularly for women, and a culture where my felt experience was so strong it needed a way to be expressed, and yet it's not proper for me to show all of these feelings and to speak these things that I am feeling so strongly. So I needed to find another world, another realm to speak and to be expressing some of that. And I had it, like, with everything, the collaborators that I meet come to me various times. I realize I'm meeting people all the time, but when sometimes a collaborator it resonates because the timing is right. Deanna Wong, who is the executive director of Real Asian Film Festival, used to be on the board of Dreamwalker, and she had said, "There's an artist I want you to meet, Annie Katsura-Rollins. She's incredible. I know that something will happen between the two of you." But that introduction was put forth like 3 years before Fire, Horse, and Shadow. And then suddenly we came back into each other's realms and we met, and it was like, oh my God, the shadow world can speak for all of my internal experiences. And then that collaboration just took off. And so that's how the title of the work is Fire Horse, which is my zodiac and element combined, and shadow, equally existing in these two planes of yin and yang, dark and light, or however you want to see those contrasts. But yeah, that was how that came to be.
Lizzie.
I'm also a huge fan of yours, Andrea. You know that. I'm also a huge fan of yours, Kate, too. And I thought it was so beautiful watching that, how much it reminded me of the piece that you both collaborated together, Kate's piece for the NAC. And I just felt like how you translated movement into language and how that kind of synergetically flowed as a piece together. I felt like if I watched it right before Kate's or before after, anything like that, it would feel like they're sisters together. So I was wondering, in the spirit of talking about process, I wonder if you could talk about the process that you two took together this summer, and continuing to take that on.
Over to you, Kate.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had this amazing opportunity in the summer through Empty Space, which Lizzie is a part of, to basically take some funding and do whatever my heart desired. And I knew right away that I needed somebody to guide me through this process of creating. So I made a dream list, and Andrea was right at the top. Just because what I said in my intro, that she creates such beautiful multidisciplinary pieces, and I wanted to do something that had lots of dance, but other elements as well. So I was lucky that Andrea had the time to come to Kitchener, and yeah, how did we begin? There was lots of talking, and I told her I wanted to create a piece about my own family and their experience with Japanese internment and assimilation in Canada. So how did we begin, Andrea?
I would say that we actually began in movement with lots of talking as well. Because
Yes.
I know that that is just the first way that I like to encounter and meet and get to know somebody, is through our shared felt awarenesses and experiences together. And that it has continued to be sort of the core, just, I would just maybe the anchor of our process.
Yes. Something Andrea really helped me with, and is continuing to help me with, and maybe you can talk about this a little bit, is creating a daily artistic practice for myself. And if you were at the last X camera with Marie-Josée Chartier, you would have heard me say that it's a struggle for me with other things happening in life. But it's something that I also feel is very important to my practice. So something that Andrea has created is called the Conscious Bodies methodology, and I am trying to incorporate that into my artistic practice. And it's something that we move through in the studio. Andrea, did you want to talk a little bit about that, or could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. And then we also have a question from Louise, which is really wonderful too.
Hi, Louise.
Yes, so Conscious Bodies methodology, and it's great because we actually have Leslie Fisher and Katrina von Radecki here. I'm going to wave to you because this is a practice that has been at the core of my artistic work, and my community-based process. It's been articulated with a team now, because I live in the felt experience world, and it's very, getting into the head is actually something I have to keep practicing doing. So I've been working with an Indigenous liaison, Philip Davis, who is really helping me to ground the practice in an understanding of coming into relationship with the lands where we find ourselves and where we are practicing and living, and with an inclusion facilitator to allow there to be all bodies availability, and then a researcher, Danielle Denisho. So Philip Davis, Michelle Silligy, Danielle Denisho are all core authors in our current version of Conscious Bodies. And what it is just that I always activate a cycle of awarenesses, and I call it a cycle of activations. Anytime I'm preparing to do, like I did it before this meeting, I do it before I go into this, when I'm in the studio. Sometimes it can be 5 minutes, sometimes it can be an hour or 2 hours. But it is sort of the basis of all of the ways that I want to awaken as much as I can of my whole being, so that as I come into relationship with others and in creation and in a sense of shared curiosity and shared discovery, that I've at least opened as many of these channels of my awareness as possible. Yeah, and Leslie, I don't know if you want to share anything about Conscious Bodies from your perspective of the experience. You don't have to.
On the spot. Carry on.
Yeah. And the only reason, yeah, go ahead, Kate.
Oh, just Lizzie, to go back to your question, that's how we start our day in the studio. We were in the studio yesterday, and we began with the cycle of activation. We move around the dance studio. Andrea puts on some music, and we see what happens. Something that's really challenging for me is oftentimes, every time I reflect afterwards, Andrea gives me pen and paper, and whatever comes out, I'm not a visual artist, so it's usually just some scribbles, but it means something to me. Like, I look at it and I can see how I was feeling during that 10 minutes of movement. It does look like something my kid would draw, though. And something that has been very challenging for me, which Andrea and I were talking about yesterday, is naming whatever it is that comes out. So Andrea might ask me a question or say, like, what are your lungs feeling? And I'm sort of moving and I have sensations, but the actual vocabulary is something that she is challenging me to find. So stay tuned. Yeah. Okay.
The cycle is really just there as a sequence to go through to bring us, to attune us to the awareness of what our body is already processing and sending out. So it's like we don't, we started with this right at the beginning. Sometimes we don't even notice these different sensations and feelings and experiences. And then sometimes if we do notice, then we don't do anything or receive or learn from that or engage with it. So it's just pushing us to go deeper into what we start to perceive and why we're perceiving it and what it's connecting with it. And yeah. Thank you. I think we're actually getting pretty close to the conclusion.
Can you see Louise's question in the chat? I can read it to you.
Yes.
I was wondering about the challenges of combining dance with voice.
Mm-hmm. That was a huge barrier for me for many years, even till recently. And it's actually, I've been inspired by our social political justice environment to find my voice. And that was part of what Fire, Horse and Shadow was really allowed me to do that. Everything I do, I have to do it through an artistic process. I won't find my way as deeply if I don't bring it into my art. So at this time when it's so important for visible minorities, people who identify as being from marginalized communities that have been oppressed or who have not had space to raise voices, I really needed to push myself to find my voice so that I could speak. So that moving through dance and allowing myself to keep moving as my voice emerges from a whole body, a whole being, and feeling my way into speech has been the pathway for me. So for dance and voice to come together, it was actually that dance is my voice, and I started to allow my voice to be felt and to emerge from the felt experience of my body in motion.
Did you work with a voice coach, Andrea?
I have extraordinary privilege of working closely with Sarah Chase, who is a genius, I would say, dance literature, story, dance artist who always integrates spoken word and storytelling into movement and does it in the most, the work that you saw there is as an example of me practicing Sarah Chase's art form for the past 15 years, I guess. We've been friends and colleagues and working together. So that was my introduction into storytelling and moving and speaking. And she remains a very, very close collaborator, and she was the dramaturg on this work. So that's definitely huge. Sarah has been a person who has really opened my boundaries to that. Yeah. I'm noticing the time, and I wonder if we could actually perform a shared gesture together so that we can include future participants and also feel ourselves coming together as an ensemble before we move into the next part of our day. Is that okay with everyone? So if you want to stand or sit or wherever you find yourself, come into a relationship where you can actually just start to extend your hands to each side of your frame and to reach across into the frame beside you, so that we start to really sense that we can create a circle, that our energies can reach across time and distance, and that people who are joining us in the future through the recording, you can do this as well, because we are including you and inviting you. Breathing and noticing our own heartbeat and our own breath and our own weight shifting, our balance, our sense of ourself in this place, creating a space digitally. And then we'll just allow our hands to go downwards, and we're going to do one closing gesture from low to high with the hands, with the eyes up, and then back down again. And we'll do it in a way that I'm not going to direct it, but we'll just do it in the timing that the group feels. Feeling across time and space, allowing ourselves to catch each other and see if we can synchronize our action simply by sensing. And allowing yourselves to ritualize the closing for this time we've spent together by placing your hands somewhere low on your body or on the ground, connecting to Mother Earth. Allowing your breath to bring a cadence of a closure. And then allowing your body to move you into the next part of your day. Thank you so much. What a joy to spend this time with you.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for this. And thank you so much, Kate, for curating this talk and hosting this talk. It was a really, really lovely way to spend the afternoon. I just want to mention that there will not be an X Camera talk next week or the week after. So we will be resuming again on February 18th. And another one of the mentees, Andrew Reinhardt, has curated that week. Yeah, so I hope everybody has a really lovely afternoon and a really lovely weekend. And we'll see you all on February 18th. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kate, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.